The nightmare began in the most glamorous setting imaginable. I was standing in the marble-tiled restroom of the Grand Hotel, hiding from the noise of the industry gala happening in the ballroom. My wife, Elena, was the star of the evening. She was receiving an award for Executive of the Year, and I had spent the last week beaming with pride. I pulled out my phone to watch the live stream of the event, wanting to see her take the stage without having to push through the crowded hall. The video feed on my screen showed the empty podium, but the audio had not cut out. The microphone was live, broadcasting from the green room, where the speakers waited. I adjusted the volume, expecting to hear her practicing her speech. Instead, I heard a giggle. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years, flirty, light, and excited. Then came the voice of Simon, her boss. "You nervous, babe?" he asked. The intimacy in his tone made my stomach drop. Elena laughed again. "Not about the speech," she said clearly. "I'm just excited for next week. I'm making Marcus take out that $200,000 loan for the renovation. Once the house value spikes, I'll serve him the divorce papers. We kick him out, and the house is ours." My phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. I stared at the screen, waiting for it to make sense, but the words just kept replaying in my mind. Kick him out. The house is ours. It wasn't just an affair. It was a heist. She was planning to use my credit history to pump up the value of our home, and then she was going to discard me like a used wrapper. The audio feed cut off abruptly as the stage manager called her name. I stood in the silence of the bathroom, staring at my reflection. I looked pale like a ghost. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to run into the ballroom and scream. But then, a strange coldness washed over me. Rage is hot and messy, but this feeling was freezing and sharp. If I screamed now, she would know I knew. She would hide the money. She would spin the narrative. I couldn't let her know she had been caught. I washed my face with cold water, straightened my tie, and walked out. I saw Elena across the hall, smiling at donors, completely unaware that 3,000 people on the stream, and her husband, had just heard her plan. I walked over, forced a smile, and kissed her cheek. "You'll be great," I whispered. The drive home was suffocating. Elena was high on adrenaline, chattering about the applause and the networking. I nodded at the right times, playing the role of the supportive husband, while my mind was racing at 100 miles an hour. When we finally got home, she crashed almost immediately, exhausted from the night. I waited until her breathing evened out into a deep sleep. Then, I quietly slipped out of bed and went to her home office. I needed proof. I opened her laptop. She was arrogant. She hadn't changed her password in 3 years. I logged into our banking portal and then into her email. What I found was worse than the conversation on the hot mic. For the last 2 years, she had been funneling small amounts of our joint savings into a consulting firm that I didn't recognize. A quick search of the business registry confirmed my suspicion. The firm was owned by Simon. She wasn't just planning to steal the house in the future. She was already draining our liquidity right now. She was funding her boyfriend's lifestyle with my paycheck. I took screenshots of everything, the transfers, the emails, the messages. I saved them to an external drive and deleted the browser history. The next morning, I called in sick to work and went straight to a divorce attorney. I showed him the screenshots and told him what I had heard on the live stream. Mr. Henderson, a man with gray hair and a tired face, looked at the documents inside. "It's bad, Marcus. If she files first after the renovation, she could tie up the assets for years. The courts are slow." I felt the walls closing in. I was going to lose my home and my savings to the man who was sleeping with my wife. But then, a memory sparked in the back of my brain. "Wait," I said. 3 years ago, Elena had that spinal surgery. She was under for a long time, and the recovery was months. Mr. Henderson looked confused. So, I pulled up a digital file on my phone. She signed a general durable power of attorney, so I could handle her business affairs. It gave me full control over real estate and banking. I handed the phone to him. He read the document, his eyes widening. "She never revoked this?" he asked. "No," I said. "She forgot about it." He smiled for the first time. "You can legally liquidate everything right now to protect the marital estate. It's nuclear, but it's legal." That evening, Elena was in a rush. She had a business trip to Paris scheduled for the next day. We both knew it wasn't business, and we both knew she wasn't going alone. She pushed a stack of papers across the dinner table, along with a pen. "Babe, we need to sign this loan application today," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I want the contractors to start while I'm away. It will be a nice surprise when I get back. It was the loan she had bragged about on the hot mic. The loan that would bury me in debt while she ran off with Simon. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I looked at the papers, pretending to read the terms. Sure, I said. Let's get it done. I signed my name at the bottom, but I didn't date it correctly. I intentionally wrote the date as 3 days prior. I knew the bank's automated compliance system would reject the application because the dates on the signature page wouldn't match the electronic filing date. It would take them 48 hours to catch the error and ask for a resign. By then, it would be too late. Have a great trip, I told her. The next morning, an Uber pulled up to the driveway to take Elena to the airport. She was dressed in designer clothes, looking more like she was going on a honeymoon than a conference. I'll call you when I land, she lied. I stood on the porch and waved. As soon as the car turned the corner and disappeared from view, my demeanor shifted. The passive, supportive husband vanished. In his place was a tactical commander engaging in a war for survival. I didn't go back inside to watch TV. I went straight to my office and picked up the phone. I didn't call a contractor. I didn't call the bank to fix the loan. I dialed the number for a large investment firm that specialized in "we buy houses for cash" deals. I had seen their billboards 1,000 times. Close in 3 days. Any condition. I wasn't going to renovate the house to increase the value for her and Simon. I was going to sell it out from under them before her plane even touched down in Europe. The operator answered. I have a property in a prime district, I said, my voice steady. I need to sell it today. The investors arrived 2 hours later. They were 2 men in sharp suits who smelled like money and opportunity. They walked through the house, taking notes on tablets. They looked at the granite countertops, the hardwood floors, and the spacious backyard. They knew the neighborhood. They knew this house was a prize. We can offer you a cash deal, the taller one said. But since you need a 3-day close, we have to offer about 15% below market value. I didn't blink. I didn't care about maximizing profit. I cared about speed. Done, I said. The shorter man hesitated. We see both names on the deed. Your wife, Elena, she needs to sign. This was the moment of truth. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the certified copy of the General Durable Power of Attorney. My wife is unavailable due to urgent medical matters abroad. I lied smoothly. This document authorizes me to liquidate assets for debt management and estate protection. Here is the deed. They scrutinized the paper, checking the stamps and signatures. It was ironclad. All right then, the investor said, extending his hand. Let's go to the title company. With the house sale in motion, I had another problem. The house was full of things. Furniture, art, electronics, a decade of accumulated life. I couldn't sell the house with our possessions still inside, and I certainly wasn't going to pay to store them for her. I contacted a high-end estate liquidator. I need everything gone, I told her. Today. She looked around at the expensive leather sofas and the Peloton bike. This is short notice, she said. We'll have to price it low to move it fast. Do it, I ordered. By noon, a team of movers and buyers had descended on the property. It was a frenzy. Elena's designer clothes, her expensive shoes, the paintings she loved, all of it was being carried out the door. I told the curious neighbors who were peeking through their blinds that we were moving to Paris unexpectedly for Elena's job. They nodded, jealous of our exciting life, unaware that I was dismantling that life piece by piece. I watched as our custom dining table was sold for pennies on the dollar. It felt like I was erasing our history, one item at a time. By late afternoon, the house was echoing and empty. I took the cash from the estate sale and drove to our main bank branch. This was the most dangerous part of the plan. I sat down with the branch manager, a woman I had known for years. I'm concerned about some transactions, I said, keeping my voice low and serious. I showed her the transfers Elena had made to Simon's consulting firm. I believe my wife is being coerced or defrauded. These payments are suspicious. The manager looked at the pattern of transfers. To a banker, money flowing to a shell company looked exactly like a scam or money laundering. I need to protect our remaining assets, I said. Please freeze the joint accounts pending a full fraud investigation. She typed rapidly on her keyboard. I can do that, she said. It will lock all cards associated with the account immediately. I nodded. And since I have power of attorney, I need to move my share of the funds to a secure, separate account to prevent further theft. She stamped the forms. In one keystroke, Elena's financial lifeline was cut. I thought I was done, but while clearing out Elena's home office earlier, I had found something taped to the underside of her desk drawer. It was a small USB drive and a piece of paper with a list of random words, a cold storage wallet, and a seed phrase. I knew enough about crypto to know what this was. I plugged it into my laptop. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. There was over $50,000 in Bitcoin on the drive. I checked the transaction dates. She had bought it using grocery money over the last 4 years. She was hiding assets even before the affair started. I felt a fresh wave of anger, but I pushed it down. I used the power of attorney and the seed phrase to access the wallet. I didn't steal it. That would be a crime. Instead, I transferred the entire amount to a secure digital escrow wallet overseen by the court system's approved list. I labeled the transaction Preservation of Marital Assets. I was safeguarding it so she couldn't spend it on Simon in Paris. Technically, I was doing her a favor. Technically, the sun was beginning to set, and I had one last errand. In the driveway sat Elena's pride and joy, a white Range Rover. She loved that car more than she loved me. It was a status symbol she flaunted at every opportunity. But I knew something she often forgot. The lease was entirely in my name because my credit score was better than hers when we got it. She just drove it. I legally controlled it. I picked up the phone and called the dealership. "I'm ending the lease early," I told the manager. "I know there's a penalty fee. I don't care. Come pick it up." He tried to argue, telling me I was losing money, but I cut him off. I wanted off my driveway in an hour. True to their word, a tow truck rumbled up the street 40 minutes later. I handed over the keys. I watched as the luxury SUV was hooked up and dragged onto the flatbed. As the truck drove away, the driveway looked startlingly empty. The house was empty. The bank accounts were frozen. The car was gone. My life was being deleted, and it felt fantastic. While I ate a simple dinner of takeout on the floor of the empty living room, my phone pinged. It was an email from the private investigator I had hired the morning after the gala. I opened the PDF report on Simon. I expected to find a typical corporate climber, but what I found was pathetic. Simon was a fraud. His consulting firm was drowning in debt. He had 3 maxed-out credit cards and a lien on his condo. The report connected the dots. Simon wasn't just sleeping with Elena, he was banking on her. He was waiting for her to divorce me and bring her half of the house equity to save his own failing business. He was using her just as much as she was using me. A dark smile crossed my face. By cutting off Elena's money, I wasn't just punishing my wife. I was unknowingly bankrupting Simon too. He was expecting a golden goose to land in Paris. Instead, he was getting a plucked chicken. 3,000 miles away in Paris, the sun was already up. I imagined the scene clearly. Elena would be walking into a high-end boutique, perhaps Chanel or Louis Vuitton, holding Simon's arm. She would pick out a vintage bag, something costing thousands of dollars, feeling entitled to a treat. She would hand the cashier our joint platinum Visa card. And then, the moment of humiliation. Declined. She would laugh it off, blaming the chip reader. She would try it again. Declined. She would pull out the backup MasterCard. Declined. The cashier would look at her with pity and annoyance. The line behind her would grow impatient. Flustered and red-faced, she would have to leave the bag on the counter and walk out. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. Finally, I answered. "Marcus, my cards aren't working. I'm stranded at the store. The bank frozen the accounts, Elena," I said, my voice calm and feigning confusion. "I got a call about suspicious activity. They think it's identity theft because of all the transfers to that consulting firm." I heard her gasp on the other end. She couldn't admit the transfers were hers without admitting to the embezzlement. "Well, unfreeze them," she shrieked. "I need money." "I can't," I lied. "They said because the fraud alert is so high, both account holders have to be present in the branch with ID. You'll have to wait until you get back." She screamed in frustration. "What am I supposed to do?" I paused. "Ask Simon to cover you. It's a business trip, right? Put it on the company card." I hung up before she could respond. The silence in the empty house was beautiful. I grabbed my pen and signed the final closing documents for the house sale that the courier had just dropped off. The house was no longer mine, and it was definitely no longer hers. The next morning, the wire transfer from the house sale hit the new account I had opened. It was a massive number. The investors had moved fast. I sat in the bank office, looking at the balance. I instructed the banker to split the funds exactly down the middle. I took my 50%, $600,000, and moved it into my personal savings, completely unreachable by her. Then, I took Elena's 50%. I didn't keep it. I didn't spend it. I transferred every cent of her share into a restricted court escrow account. I attached a legal note, disputed marital assets, pending divorce litigation. She had the money, technically, but she couldn't touch a dime of it without a judge's order, and getting that would take months of expensive legal battles she couldn't afford. I walked out of the bank with a heavy check in my pocket. I was officially homeless, but I was cash-rich and free. I returned to the house one last time to hand over the keys. The new owners were a pair of developers who planned to gut the place and flip it. They didn't care about the memories in the walls. I walked through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. I went into the master bedroom. On the floor, right where the nightstand used to be, I placed a small object. It was Elena's wedding ring. I had found it in her jewelry box before the estate sale. She hadn't even worn it to Paris. She had left it behind, just like she planned to leave me. I left it there on the dusty floor, a symbol of her abandoned vows. I walked out the front door, locked it, and dropped the keys in the lockbox. I got into my rental car and drove away without looking back. 3 days later, Elena and Simon flew back. I knew they were coming because I got a notification from the airline app. Her ticket was linked to my email. They were furious and likely broke. Simon's credit cards must have hit their limit paying for the hotel and flights once my money stopped flowing. They landed at the airport, tired and jet-lagged. I imagined Elena pulling out her phone to call an Uber, but the app was linked to the frozen card. Payment failed. She couldn't call a car. She couldn't call a taxi because she had no cash. Humiliated, she had to do the one thing she hated most. She had to call her mother. I could picture the conversation, explaining banking errors and asking for a ride like a teenager. It was a long, quiet ride from the airport to the suburb where she thought she still lived. Her mother's car pulled up to the curb of our house. Or rather, what used to be our house. Elena must have been confused immediately. There was a large industrial dumpster in the driveway, filled with drywall and debris. And stuck firmly in the front lawn was a sign, "Sold property acquired by Apex Development." She jumped out of the car, leaving her bags. She ran to the front door, jamming her key into the lock. It didn't turn. The developers had changed the locks the same day. She pounded on the door, screaming my name. The door opened, but it wasn't me. It was a burly construction worker covered in dust. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, looking annoyed. "This is private property." "It's my property," she screamed. "Where is my husband?" "Lady, I don't know who you are, but the previous owner sold this place 3 days ago," the worker said. He pulled out his phone and showed her a digital copy of the deed transfer. It listed Apex Development as the owner. Elena stared at the screen, her face losing all color. She collapsed onto the lawn, hyperventilating. Her mother got out of the car, looking horrified. Neighbors began to come out onto their porches, drawn by the screaming. These were the people Elena had tried so hard to impress for years. Now they watched as she had a meltdown in the dirt, barred from her own home. It was the second public spectacle of her life, but unlike the gala, she wasn't the star. She was the victim of her own game. The construction worker warned her he would call the police if she didn't leave. Broken and sobbing, she let her mother drag her back to the car. It didn't take her long to find me. I had moved into a modern apartment downtown, and she got the address through a mutual friend I hadn't blocked yet. Late that night, there was a furious banging on my door. I checked the peephole. It was her. I opened the door calmly, holding a mug of coffee. She looked wrecked, hair messy, makeup smeared, eyes wild. "You stole my life," she screamed, trying to push past me. I blocked the doorway. "You sold our house. You stole my money." I didn't raise my voice. I reached to the table and handed her a manila folder. "No, Elena. I liquidated our assets pursuant to the power of attorney you signed. I did it to protect the estate from fraud." I pointed to the papers. "Your share is in escrow. You can access it once the divorce is final, which, given your plans to kick me out, shouldn't be a problem for you." She stood there, stunned that I knew about her plan. "How?" she whispered. "How did you know?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I picked up my phone. "You might want to check the company intranet," I said. "And Facebook. To get ahead of her narrative, I had uploaded the hot mic clip from the gala just minutes before she arrived. I captioned it simply, "The reason the house is sold." The video was already exploding. It had thousands of views. In the video, her voice was crystal clear. "I'll serve him the divorce papers. We kick him out." The comments were brutal. Everyone saw the real Elena. She scrolled through the feed, her hands shaking violently. She looked up at me with pure terror. She knew her reputation was incinerated. The fallout was swift and professional. The next morning, Simon's company board saw the video. In the corporate world, having an affair is frowned upon, but being caught on tape conspiring to commit financial fraud against a spouse is a liability no company will tolerate. Not only was Simon sleeping with a subordinate, but he was also implicated in a scheme that made the company look unethical. By noon, the news broke. Simon was fired for cause. He lost his severance package. He lost his reputation in the industry. Elena, being the subordinate in the affair, was also terminated for violating the company's ethics policy and creating a public relations disaster. In less than 24 hours, the power couple of the office was jobless and disgraced. The romance didn't survive the poverty. Broke, jobless, and facing public ridicule, Simon turned on Elena instantly. He had been counting on her money to bail him out. Now that she was just a liability with frozen assets, he had no use for her. He sent her a text message while she was staying in her mother's guest room. "This is too much drama. I can't be involved in your messy divorce. Don't contact me again." That was it. No goodbye, no apology. He blocked her number. She was left with no husband, no lover, no house, no job, and no access to her money. She had gambled everything on a cruel plan, and she had lost every single chip. The legal battle was the final nail in the coffin. Elena sued me for fiduciary misconduct, claiming I had no right to sell the house without her consent. We met in court a month later. Her lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-husband who acted out of malice. He demanded the sale be reversed and the money returned. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, simply played the hot mic tape for the judge. Then, he presented the power of attorney document and the evidence of her transfers to Simon's company. "Your Honor," Henderson said, "my client acted to stop an active embezzlement of marital funds." The judge looked at Elena with undisguised disgust. The ruling was swift. The judge declared that I had acted within my legal rights to protect the estate. The sale stood. The money would remain in escrow until the divorce was finalized. The divorce took another 6 months, but the end result was inevitable. Because I had proof that Elena had wasted marital funds on Simon's business and the Bitcoin she tried to hide, the judge deducted those costs from her share of the escrow account. By the time she paid her lawyers and the penalties, she was left with a fraction of what she expected. I, on the other hand, walked away with my full share, my dignity, and a clean slate. One afternoon, months later, I was driving my new car through downtown. I passed a bus stop. There, sitting on the bench, was Elena. She looked tired. She was wearing generic clothes and holding a canvas tote bag instead of a designer purse. She looked up as I drove by, and for a split second, our eyes locked. I didn't honk. I didn't wave. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt free. I turned up the music and kept driving. I had won.